horses here with Mary, because that's the principal animal she works with. And first of all, Mary, can you explain to us what you mean by equine assisted learning practitioner? What do you actually mean by that, and what do you do in your work with horses that helps the horses but also helps the humans who are linked with them?
Okay, Pam, it's lovely to be here. I'll start with, imagine you're at a crossroads, or you have an issue in your life and you decide to go to a coach or a therapist or a counselor or a career guidance coach. But instead of going to them in their rooms, in their consulting rooms, or a consultant, you are brought to a barn or a field or an arena, and we work that issue out, or those issues out, in the presence of horses. So that's it. And it started for me when I was living in Colorado, where I heard of 2 psychotherapists who literally brought their practice into an arena. And yeah. I thought, this is mad. This is crazy. Because I grew up with horses, and I was caught in the old matrix, as we call it, of, horses something to be, is an animal, is a dumb animal, in that sense.
Oh, no.
So,
oh, no.
Out of sheer curiosity, I went, and it just was pivotal in my life, pivotal experience in my life. So
could you give us a really big example of how it's changed either your life or someone else's life that you've worked with?
Okay, I will. I'll give an example of the story I told you when I spoke to you the last time, Pam. But I just want to go back a little bit on what do horses do before I go to that. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. So because horses in the wild are wired to they're prey animals, so they're wired to read whether a coyote or a wolf or a human, sorry to say, is coming in to either kill them, trap them, or whatever. So they're genetically wired because they're attacked, or a mountain lion. So they are wired that when you come into their presence, they can actually hear your heartbeat from 4 feet away. They can feel what sometimes you're not even conscious of. And so you can rock up, in your designer gear, or your bicycle, or your posh car, or your rags, but they don't look at you on that level. They get you on a resonance level. How are the frequencies running in your world? And they pick that up, and they either, will reflect that back to you, or they will move away from you, or they'll get closer to you if they sense that you're in coherence and you're authentic. Beautiful. So that's how it works. So when you go into an arena, I have done a serious amount of personal development myself, but I can truly say that horses are way beyond me when it comes to the wisdom that they hold and what they can reflect back to a human. So that's sort of equine assisted learning in a kind of a nutshell. And then just on the third element of that, before I tell the story, is that it's scientifically shown now that just by being in their presence, their heart energy is about 7 times larger than ours. And in fact, our heart energy is 100 times larger than our brain energy. And this is where we need to be living from our heart. So just by being in their, in a sense, frequency field, it is scientifically shown that blood pressure can drop, that heart rate can regulate, and that very much so anxiety and worry can fall away, because we come into this frequency that's very grounded and very on the earth. They literally, as I said the last one was talking to you, they've literally 4 suckers on the ground, So they pull us out of this busy mind and into our own hearts, and into our own heart coherence, and into where we find that calm, just by nothing to do with any practices that we do as equine assisted learning facilitators, just by standing within 3 feet of a horse.
Because they've got massive heart toroidal fields.
Yes, massive.
Very healing.
Massive. Yeah, and I used to run a business in Dublin at one point, and I still stayed in touch with horses, and I had 15 people working for me, and I can still remember driving out to having conversations in my head. Why did she say that to the customer? And I go, now just knock out a stable. I wouldn't even ride. I now drive home and say, gosh, I'm not thinking in the way I used to. Now, I knew nothing at the time about equine assisted learning, but I had experienced how I'd come out of this busyness and had come down into my own embodied awareness, and so where there's no story spinning or no conversation running. Okay, so that's it. So I can tell you a story if you'd like me to.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. As an example,
Okay.
Beautiful.
I have so many. We could be here for 2 hours. So let me just think of okay, I'll tell you one from. I was invited to the Caribbean to be with a man who has 25 horses. Okay, and it was part holiday, part work. And he ran called Equus Rides, taking people for rides along the beach in the Caribbean. And just before I left, one of the workers asked for an equine assisted learning session. And while I was there, I, of course, had to check all the horses out because I'm a horse girl. And there was one horse that I was quite drawn to. His name was Lancelot, big black horse. But he was what we call in the horse world head shy. And he wouldn't let me touch his head. But when I eventually got to touch his head with my finger, his nose was covered in ridges. Okay, and I said to Paul, who ran the place, I said, "What's up with Lancelot? He's got all these bumps," and he said, "Well, it's practice in the Caribbean when they race on the beach that they cover the horse's head with a sack, they beat it with a stick." And then they pull the sack off, and the horse runs as if the devil is after him, basically pumping with adrenaline. And this happened to Lancelot. He said even to the point that he won't even go on the beach now. He won't allow anyone ride him on the beach. He gets so nervous. So so that was a story. So, oh my gosh, how horrific that is. So anyway, this woman asked for a session, and her issue was that there was a recurring pattern in her life where she would get very friendly with people, be very giving, very nice, do everything for them, and professionally the same thing would happen. She'd be the gopher girl. And then in both situations she started to feel resentful because it wasn't coming back. It wasn't kind of a two-way traffic. I suppose the word we'd have for it now is codependent behavior. So, and what she would do was she'd either withdraw from the friendship or leave the job. And it was recurring to the point that she just needed to look at it. And she was aware enough to know that it was repeating itself. So we chose a horse. She chose a horse to work with, which was Lancelot. So one of my exercises, you do not touch the horse. When you go into the horse's arena, you wait for the horse to make contact with you first. So we did a body scan, we do some exercises to stay grounded. If you start feeling resentful, if you start playing out the story in the arena, what do you do? And rather than withdrawing from the horse, what happens? So we prepared. She went in, she walked over to the feeding trough, and Lancelot just stood there, just shooting the breeze, looking around, didn't even pay attention to her. She walked over to the scratching tree. Lancelot just, didn't pay any attention to her. Then she went into the center of the arena and sat down in a lotus position. Now, even in my training, this is not allowed, but I have what I now call horse instinct. I just felt, leave it alone, just wait, just take a breath. Next thing, what did Lancelot do when he come over and lie down beside her and put his head in her lap? Now, I had never seen a horse before lie down beside somebody. It was new for me. Yeah, I've seen it a lot of times since. But in this case, he put his head in her lap, and there she started to slowly stroke his head, and he left his head in her lap. And I'm there like, oh my God, it was like the tears just pouring down my face. Okay. And there's a kind of a longer version to that story, but I won't go into it. There's a part 2 where she came out and she went back in again, and she sat down again, and the very same thing happened again. But I won't go into that. I'll just get into the learning because of time. So when she came out, I just said, well, what were you doing? What did it mean when you went to the scratching tree and the feeding trough? And she just started to laugh. She said, that's what I do with people. You know, I thought Lancelot would think I had food, or I thought he would think I would scratch him. But horses get you. And I'm not interested in your false self. Basically, that's the message. This is the game you play to get attention. I've no interest in this. And she saw it so clearly. She saw so clearly that he was not playing the game with her.
So that was a real breakthrough for her, Mary.
That was a realization that this behavior isn't healthy. This giving, and if I hear that line, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. I said, yeah, so it's like he was nodding. And I said, what were you doing, what were you thinking when you sat into the middle of the arena? And, I feel tears. She said, I chose to be vulnerable. I chose to let go of efforting, sit down to be vulnerable, and just be with my heart.
And did it help to heal Lancelot?
Well, this is the other thing that happened. I mean, and I just said, then what would that look like if, you're in a situation where you're resentful? What would vulnerability look like? What would be absolutely honest and raw look like? Here you are being vulnerable with a horse, and the horse then shares his vulnerable, the most vulnerable part of his body back with you. And I ended up saying, some people might walk away, but you'll actually get real connection with the ones that don't, so. But then the following day, Pam, to answer your question, she was riding Lancelot on the beach. She was riding Lancelot on one of the rides. And when they got to the beach, she did what she normally did, which was to get off and lead him, because he shook like a little kitten on the beach. This time, because they use felt saddles in the Caribbean, not the traditional saddles, this time he lay down the sand and rolled. So there was something about that there's this connection between animals, and I'm seeing it with other animals as well. But when we connect with them in a real way, they connect back with us in a real way. But we all sort of come up the Richter scale of healing together. We can awaken a horse to his true potential or her true potential, but they can help us to become aware of our unconscious behaviors. So that was just one. And the third part of that story is the owner, Paul, came to visit me in the West. I live in Ireland. Came to visit me in the West of Ireland. He said, of all my horses, because I wouldn't share what happened, to him, because that's client privilege, and this woman has given me permission to share the story publicly since. But of all my horses to do this, Lancelot, I can't believe it. I want to learn, how did you make the horse do this? I was like, I didn't learn anything. I didn't teach the horse anything. This is horse wisdom. There are 55 million years on the planet. We're only here a couple of 100,000 years. Originally, there were sacred keepers. They were treasure. They carried people from one reality to the next. They have that in them. And, and I started teaching him some simple boundary exercises with horses, and not touching the horse until the horse touches you. He couldn't cope because he was so filled up with the old way of approaching an animal. And after coming all the way to see me, he just wanted to learn circus tricks that I didn't have. So that's just one very powerful example with a horse. In my book, Saved by a Horse, it's a very simple book with very simple stories, but there's a number of stories there in that book, and that story is in that book, yeah.
So the connection happens via authenticity, being your absolute true sense. And the better your match of heart coherence with the horse, the better that contact will be, that healing will be, because it brings coherence for your heart as well.
Yeah, well, what it does is it shows up what you need to look at.
Right.
So if you walk in with something unconscious and you want to see what that is, the horse in all the cases I've come across will reflect that back. So.
And I love the fact, Mary, you talk about the horses as threshold guides, because they're in a period of huge transformation and transition. We're in threshold times. So what can horses teach us about this or lead us into? Because, we're right in the crucible of change right now. How are horses, with their wisdom, leading us and instructing us?
Well, I think I will say here in this case horses and all animals, actually, because what has happened, I'm writing a third book, and I had finished the book when I was shown there's another chapter, and it was called Reconnection to the Sacred. And then I started to research on that, and I literally have sat in my room just crying my eyes out, because if you look at the Buddhist tradition, it was Kantata that took Siddhartha out of the castle to the edge of the forest and left him there where he became Buddha. Muhammad was led by a horse burrak through the hell and heaven. Even in Ireland, in the heart chakra point of Ireland, which is Uisneach, Uisneach, Dagda, who was the father of the Tuatha De Danann, which were the people of light, who are now the little people of Ireland, who are gone into the drumlins and the hills. They found a subterrane of two, they're called solar horses, a mare following a stallion following a mare, and they're decked out in the full regalia of a high king or high chieftain, and they were said to be carriers of light.
Wow! So there was a real reverence.
So we had all that. These were people watching this could be listening to this in the middle of an apartment in a city, but so many people have this connection with horse, with the mystical, beautiful quality of horse, and even dream of them. And even in Jungian therapy, it means something if you dream of a horse. So we have this kind of ancient connection, and of course we're only 2 generations away from how they carried our food and our milk and plowed our fields and went down our mines. We were so even our cars are connected to horsepower. So we have this but prior to when they became beasts of burden, they were sacred beings, carriers of light, bringing, even in the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, you have the 4 horses of the apocalypse, one bringing revolution, the other bringing famine, the other bringing death, and we're in the year of the horse. So this energy. So if you look at any of the traditions, they brought the founders, Muhammad, in the Greek tradition, Pegasus, from one reality to the next. How I'm bringing that into today's language is, we have been so conditioned, Pam, in our educational system and also in our religious system. We're so disempowered, and we've made the rational mind God. You have to think about, whereas when you come into the field of an animal, and in this case a horse, who doesn't think in that rational way, it feels with its heart, and its body holds the intelligence. It helps us to come out of that little box up here and down into that world below our chin, where there's no story spinning, where we're making 3 million red blood cells a second. We're already awesome. What's that a minute? I can't even figure it out. And we don't even know what makes our heart beat. And we worry about, food tomorrow, and we don't even, so much is happening by this incredible cosmic intelligence that's working through us. Horses live that all the time. They live in that state of knowing, or they're not thinking about tomorrow. When they feel something, they let it move through them. They hold no story. They release, they forgive, and as we say, they go back to grazing. We kind of feel it, and then the mind comes in, puts a lid on it, and says, "You shouldn't be thinking like that. You're a nice person. You shouldn't be thinking these murderous thoughts or whatever." We're not allowed. So they all go under. And we've lids of lids of lids. So a real beautiful and we've collected so much conditioned responses and ancestral responses and gender responses, what it means to be Irish, what it means to be English, what it means to be female, male. And I think when we go into an arena with, in my case, a horse, maybe somebody else, other people working with dolphins, or I think deer could be amazing too, because they're also prey animals, but you go into an arena, they bring you into another way of being. And I see in so many cases, in the presence of a horse, people start feeling. They start feeling. I have one gorgeous young girl came to me. She just came out of curiosity because her sister had such a breakthrough dealing with panic attacks in the presence of horses. She decided she'd come. And she came all smiley whilies, gorgeous, very polite, very nice. She walks into her, she's 12, going on 13, goes into the arena and starts sobbing, crying. And what had happened was, she finished, we call it high school, in here in Ireland we call it national school. She'd finished her high school in the middle of the COVID lockdown. There was no opportunity to say goodbye to her fellow students or her teachers. She didn't know, but she was feeling totally despondent and depressed and not looking forward to secondary school. And felt really sad. She was so happy in her high school, in her primary school years. And she was just feeling, and she hadn't felt it. She hadn't allowed herself to feel it. But just by being in this energy that brings her down, she could feel she's really sad and never say goodbye. And so I checked at the end, this is where my coaching skills come in. I said, have you shared this with anyone else? No, she didn't even know she was feeling it, only that she was feeling kind of numb, And so she decided to call a friend. The friend was feeling the same, of course. Sometimes what we think is only our personal thing, we have the courage to be open. And they ended up deciding to create a ritual in the woods, in a circle, social distance, all got T-shirts made, got a gift for their teachers, and she sailed into her high school years smiling.
That's beautiful. So horses really do act as mirrors to what we are truly feeling, even if we don't know that ourselves and haven't been able to get in touch with it. They reflect back the state of our heart and improve our heart coherence. But the reason I think this conversation is so relevant for now is we are moving into a phase of consciousness where we're going to remember our connection to the ancient, the animal world, the elemental world, that every living thing has consciousness. Every tree, every bird, every crystal, every rock, every piece of moss, every slug. It all has consciousness in different forms.
We are all fractals of this field of consciousness.
Exactly.
And one of the exercises, there's a gift for anyone who wants to. It's called reflective practices, but one is called beginner's mind.
Beautiful, yeah.
And it's like walk into a field, whether there's chickens or hens or trees or flowers or dogs or cats, or just take away the name you put on it and just see it as a part of this incredible expression of life, of consciousness. And of course, I think it's Chiron has just moved into Taurus, and so it's like that real coming down. And back to the threshold piece, I mean, I've had a spiritual experience in the presence of a horse. And I've put it into a story, actually, in reflective practices, where I decided to go into the field and have no agenda. This horse didn't like to be touched. And just go into the horse's world and just be in the horse's world, not going in. I wanted to go in and just touch it. And when I went in, this horse is very clear with her boundaries. I just stood 3 feet away from her. And I had this embodied electric feeling running through my body, right down through my legs. And not only was I hearing with my ears, I was hearing with my skin. I was hearing the bird's song and the breeze. And in that exact moment, I said, oh my God, this is how horses live. And the very minute I thought that thought, she reached over and she just gave a little nip to my knuckle here. And normally I'd be afraid of something like that, but now I was in horse world. And I heard clearly, welcome to my world.
Beautiful.
And it was so awake, Pam. It was a vibrating, there was no such thing as time. It was timeless, but it was a vibrating, overflowing, transcendent now.
So horses in that way can take us into other dimensions where we are in a pure state of being.
Absolutely. I run now a couple of months since I started to prepare this last chapter, Returning to the Sacred. I have decided that, and I'll share one other experience I had. It was a very short story. I decided to start bringing some of this work online so that you don't have to travel to the west of Ireland to see me. And I have been bowled over by what I found by just going in, using visualization, using pictures of horses or a horse you loved. And people have had cathartic experiences and breakthroughs. One is on my YouTube where she just said her life is totally changed after that. 2 hours. And I had an experience here. I wasn't near my horse. I work with my own horses, but I also work in a livery yard. And without going into what happens in livery yards, a lot of horses suffer there. It's not, it's part of an old. People believe they're doing well, but they're in little boxes and they're herd animals. It's one piece, and in the wild they eat 18 hours a day, but in a livery yard they kind of get breakfast and dinner, and they need food in their stomach all the time. So it's just, they suffer. And but there was one horse there in this particular yard, they go trekking. They're ridden by different people all year round because I live in a tourist part of Ireland. And but this one horse hadn't sort of lost his spirit. Some of them numbed down. And I was here in my house one day, and I was ruminating over a situation where I had felt kind of wronged. And I was kind of cross about it, and I was having these conversations in my head, and next thing, this horse that in the livery yard just kept coming into my mind, and he loves to play, and I just said, "Okay, Cody, what do you think?" And I just heard clearly, I haven't been treated right either. And immediately, Pam, I'm an hour's drive away from this livery yard. Immediately, all my kind of conversations just fell away. Just like that, like it turned the tap on. So that plus my last chapter, I said, I'm going to bring this online because when you think about something, you're there, and you're sharing that all the time with your beautiful work, So when we think about horse frequency, horse energy, ancient horse energy, we can tap into it. And of course, homeopathy, it's frequency medicine, and there's so much energy medicine out there. And so I'm going to continue doing that because it's available to all of us, whether we're not near animals at all. Yeah.
It's very touching, and I know when we spoke earlier you talked about the analogy of horses being saddled and bridled and martingales and all the equipment, but that's such a metaphor really for where we are or where we have been as humanity, with all of this top-down control and dominance, and people talk about breaking a young horse to make it obedient. There's such a strong parallel here, and so the need for freedom for the horse, and we're really feeling it deeply in the year of the fire horse. We really, really are. The need for freedom, just as horses have, is going to start to surge through humanity. I think particularly in the second half of this year as Jupiter moves into Leo. So they can teach us so much because they've suffered immensely, but also they're way ahead of us in terms of I think their level of consciousness.
Absolutely. And when we start, like all my work now is at liberty. I put no halters on, no saddle, and of course equine assisted work in its essence is on the ground. Yeah. Some people do equine assisted, they call it mindful riding. I don't do that. I don't ride anymore either. And I don't own a bridle or a saddle. I have halters because sometimes you need to box a horse to take it somewhere. But and I have found it's amazing because once you give them the choice, they're way more, rather than coming in with this unconscious arrogance, that I have to lead them here and tie them. But once you give them the choice, I have seen over and over again, as soon as the session is over, they will walk away. I don't have to be controlling and dominating in that way. And of course, what we do to another, we're doing to ourselves. So we have been harnessed, and saddled, and we hold ourselves in. And we've been boxed into little, in ice. So many people. I mean, I remember listening to Mother Teresa in Dublin many years ago, and she said the epidemic of loneliness is much worse than the epidemic in India. People living in their little stables on their own and not part of community or a herd. So yeah, and also a horse on its own in a field isn't right either, and also I'm seeing, maybe it's my algorithms in my phone, but I'm seeing so many competitions now where it's bitless bridles, and it's just such a step in the right direction.
And I don't know if you're aware of Ben Atkinson's work.
Yeah.
It's always free, and it's just beautiful to watch. So,
but he's just moving with the frequency. He's in the frequency field of horse.
Exactly, it's spectacular.
And he's just moving with that frequency, in the same way as birds fly together.
Yes,
or the starling murmurations.
Yeah.
They're tuned into the frequency, and we're starting to wake up to that. This is not a factory here. This is a field of frequency. This body.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It's interesting, Mary, on social media, I often see a lady, sadly, I don't know her name, but she's a healer in America, and she has many horses that are free. And when people are very ill, they lie on a couch, and it's in the open air, it's out in the woods somewhere. And the horses, just by choice, will come and rest their heads very, very gently on the patient, often where the area where there's an energy block.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They go into a trance. They go into a healing trance to help that. But it's beautiful to watch, and it always brings me to tears. So, and do other animals do this as well?
I'm laughing, but I'm going to share. Yes, I started. About 3 years ago. I was introduced to a book called Kingship with All Life, and it was written in the 1950s. And I recommend you get it. It's a slim little book, John Boone, and it was the story of a man who was asked to mind a dog, okay? And what he was saying in the book was exactly what I'm seeing with the horse. When he approached the dog with arrogance and with agenda, they clashed, basically. And when he started coming into mutual respect, this is another sentient being over here that has intelligence that I can't even fathom, and they had a wonderful time. So it was transforming for him. He was minding this dog for 3 months. So then he went into doing research on other people, and the last chapter of the book is about an experience with a fly. Look, get the book. Okay, it's just so funny. It's actually so funny. This fly humbled a very famous actor, and the actor said, "I've such a big ego, and nobody can address it, but a fly has just humbled me." But anyway, back to the book. I decided, I'm going to start trying this with other animals. Trying what I'm doing with horses. So I had an experience last year with a lizard in Italy. And that's in my new book that will be coming out, hopefully either the end of this autumn 2026 or March or spring 2027. But a year ago, my first experience with other animals was I'm sitting in a hotel near where I live, and waiting to meet somebody. And next thing, these two waiters come. The hotel it's a lounge, and at the end of the lounge is a long conservatory, and big arched ceilings, glass conservatory. And at the very end of this long conservatory is a door, but the ceiling goes up above the door. And next thing, these waiters come up with brooms, and they're going like this. And I'm like, what's going on? Next thing I see, there's a crow flying up and down in the thing, and I just jump up and I say, well, stop. And I said, I'll take care of it. I had no idea what I was going to do, but it was just, here we are coming with our domination again and control, of course. And I just said, I'm an animal communicator. I don't call myself an animal communicator. I just facilitate that connection between the natural world and the human world back and forth. It's a two-way traffic thing. But I had to say something to get them to put their brooms down. So anyway, they put the brooms down. So I go in and I just ground myself. It's feel my feet on the ground, connect to my heart. Meanwhile, this bird is frantically flying way above me, a blackbird, and I think it was a crow. I can't remember what. And I just connect my heart to its heart. Okay, and I just say, I see you as a fractal of this intelligence that I'm part of, and I connect my heart to yours. And you've got this. It was like I just said to the crow, you're intelligent, you've got this. Quietly, this is all inside me, heart-to-heart communication. With that, the crow lands in front of me and walks in a straight line up the length of the conservatory and walks out the door. And you have to see a crow walking. They kind of waddle.
Yeah.
Like they're much more graceful in the air, and it walks out the door. And I'm just as surprised as the two staff members behind me, because I was just trying it out. I just had this instinct, you can't just beat the poor animal out, the poor bird out the door. And it just lands, and it's totally calm, and it just waddles up the tiled floor, and then walks out the door. And then they turn to me and they offer me a job in the hotel because it was happening all the time.
It's really quite shamanic as well.
But it's sort of like when we start recognizing that we're all, in a sense, part of this cosmic intelligence. And we're all creatures in the choir, playing out our part. But what we have done is we've made our mind, the rational mind, God, and then we get into this dualistic thinking, right and wrong, good and bad. We numb ourselves down, and then we numb our animals down. And then the other thing that with animals, and I say that with dogs as well, they don't judge us. They live in the moment. They process stuff and let it go. They're not holding a story of what they may hold trauma by what we've done. It needs to be cleared, like Lancelot on the beach. But they don't hold resentment towards a human. And gosh, we do, and I do, or have done. But they know how to forgive. And that was the experience I had with Cody. I found it was coming up to Easter when I had that experience of feeling this kind of, in a sense, lack of forgiveness towards this person. And it was Easter week, I think, and it was like, I'm not, and all of a sudden I was able to release this person with forgiveness, in the same way as the Christ, released whatever Judas. It was the energy of that week, but it was a horse. It was the Christ consciousness of a horse that was teaching me that, in a sense, if you want to use that language. So, but that crow one was just pivotal for me. Whatever.
So that's really quite funny.
So basically, we can, I'm here talking about horses, but this is about all of the natural world, all, and they are there. They're more there than we are. I remember I was saying to you last week, when I was talking to you, Pam, that there's every level of human consciousness on the earth right now. We see it if we watch the news, which I don't, like from the incredible cruelty and disconnection, because you couldn't be that cruel unless you're disconnected from something inside yourself, to incredible awakening, compassion, community, and everything in between, So there's every level of human consciousness. But if a horse is a horse is a horse, a dog is a dog is a dog, unless we've trained them, to be fighting dogs or fighting hens, but they've come in as who they are, and they are who they are, and they will help us come back to who we are and let go of the conditioned, over-educated, rational mind, disempowering systems that we have kind of come under. Take our power back and get rid of, in a sense, our bridles and saddles and harnesses, and connect to our heart-aligned essence and start living. I think we have no idea what it's like to be, what a human is,
Yeah, I think that's very true, and we're going to be discovering a lot about that going.
Yeah, because we say that I was only human. I'm sure. Yeah, but what?
I don't think we can have that excuse any
No,
further.
I was only human, so I went out and got drunk. I was only human, I human or whatever. No, you're not. You're way beyond that. As I said, 3 million red blood cells a second. Go figure out who you are with just that information. We are unbelievably.
So, what advice would you give someone, Mary, to start to better understand, listen, and communicate with their animals?
Stop trying to control. Right down to if you're walking your dog, let it sniff. If it meets another dog and does a little growl, let it growl. We talk all the time. They'll figure it out. They're way more intelligent than we are. See it from a place of equality. See that this being, this being of pulsating, vibrating frequency sitting beside you or in a field, is part of you. In fact, you're part of it, and it's part of you. And start looking at it with wonder. And maybe the other thing you could start doing, this is the other way around, maybe start welcoming the people in your life the same way as your dog welcomes you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Let your own heart blow open a little bit, Maybe get into that curiosity. I was listening to a podcast last week, and the thing that humans are numbing down on is curiosity about each other. So maybe be more like an animal. What does my favorite poet, Mary Oliver, you don't have to be good. You don't have to walk for 1,000 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. So start coming back to your own wild, instinctual nature, and let those beautiful beings in your life that haven't fully left that, unless you've beaten it out of them or numbed it out of them, let them show you how. And one way would be feel what you need to feel without judging it. Watch when you're judging another and start just, what am I feeling behind this judgment of another? I just feel sad about what's happening in the world, so can you leave the other alone and just allow the sadness just move through you? And anything else, just don't, stop doing so much with your animals, particularly with your horses. Just go and be with them, sit with them. There's a man in America, he brings people from the corporate world out into the herd, and he just gives them a sandwich and a clipboard and a pen and a couple of sheets of paper, throws them out into a field for the day. They've come from the city, and they come in that evening totally different. All they have to do is sit and observe the herd, and as they do, they're starting to drop into their own expanded awareness and their own embodied awareness. So stop doing so much. Animals just want us to be with them, the same way as children do, actually. They don't want more toys in a sense, they just want you to get down with them, and just be with them. Yeah.
It's beautiful, because so much of what you're talking about, Mary, is, beginner's mind. It's very Buddhist. There's a phrase that comes to mind, I want to be the person my dog thinks I am, which has always amused me. But it's the animals are leading us. I've often said this in other animals are leading us into this very different consciousness, this different state of being, these higher dimensions, this recognition of unity consciousness across all states of being. There's something very beautiful.
They live in oneness. Yes. They live in oneness of their essence. And we live in foreign countries. Like, I love the story in the Bible of the prodigal son. Went off to foreign lands, and and then he came home. But that homecoming, to me, is coming back to our unfiltered, uncluttered, unconditioned essence. And who am I? Who really am I? And go and ask a flower that question. There's one lovely exercise I did. I did a training in Glastonbury, called Priestess in the Underworld. But we did this wonderful exercise: is go out into nature and pick a thing in nature, wasn't an animal, and write to it as if it's a long lost lover, and let it write back to you as if it's a long lost lover. And it was just, it unravels parts of your heart that are so real. So you can do that to your dog as well, or your horse, or your chickens, or, just see them. See, we're all part of this love expression. So come out of that controlling. And like I was thinking, preparing for chatting to you, I was thinking of a friend, she's 2 dogs, and you go for a walk with her, and you can't talk to her because every second sentence is just calling the dogs back because you can't see them. And I say, Jenny, can you just trust that they'll come back? They'll be back. They're not, they know who's going to feed them tonight, But it's that control, that tight rein that we can have on them, but we have on ourselves as well. That's the piece.
That's the perfect mirror, isn't it? So what I know, time is ticking by, Mary, and I know you'd very much like to do a reflective practice with us.
I would, yeah.
Now, and I think everybody would really benefit from that.
Because we can talk and talk, but it's about experiencing something. Yeah,
exactly that.
And I think that your question about the sacred and horses as threshold, I think that's a whole other conversation, Pam. We could do a whole topic on that and go in and even do a practice with that online. This one felt very much about come back to our hearts.
Yeah.
Come back to, heart. My new title, I think, is Heart Aligned Equine Assisted Learning, Heart Aligned Coaching, because the heart is a vortex, and it has 100 times more electric frequency than our heads, And just if you see a horse, go into a field and sit beside it, because its heart energy is 7 times more than yours, and you'll come out differently, So, yes, so I'll do this exercise. Yeah.
Beautiful. We're all ready. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So this exercise, it's just, if you're driving the car, don't do it, okay? Or if you're running heavy machinery, please don't. Just press pause, and when you're back in your own private space, you can do this exercise. And it's really just helping us to come out of this world. We live between our ears so much. Come out and come into the world below our chin and under our skin. And so I call it a body scan or body centering. And I will finish with a poem in it, and I'm going to offer 30 seconds of silence. And it is, when I do it, because this title is Horses as Teachers, this is where animals live all the time. They live fully in their bodies. I'm sorry to say we're not quite fully incarnated yet now with this Chiron, Taurus, and Leo. Something may start happening, but it's like to come down into our bodies. So this poem was written on a morning where I wasn't in my body. I was flying and I was busy and I had a list and I was running and I was looking for my bag to get into the car and go. And I was in a house where we had these long windows and we had the horses actually out on the lawn. And my chestnut mare, Emily, was just looking in at me, spinning around the place. And I just said, okay, I will. Okay, I'll stop. Before I get into the car, I'll stop. And I journal. I do a lot of writing, and I wrote down what she said, and that's the poem. Okay? Yeah. And there's a reference in the poem's fetlock. And a fetlock is that part just above the horse's hooves. And it's the equivalent of our knuckles, or the ball of our foot, just in case anybody doesn't understand horse language. So we'll start with just either wherever you are, just either close your eyes or look down at a 45-degree angle, whatever is comfortable for you to do where you are right now. And just give yourself permission to drop into yourself more fully. And how you can do that is by inhaling. As you inhale, I use the analogy of like parachuting. Imagine you're kind of parachuting into yourself, dropping into your sitting bones if you're sitting, the bones of your feet on the floor. Giving your elbow bones permission to drop. The very minute we drop our elbows, our neck and shoulders relax. And then just picture your bones. When we visualize our bones, in most cases they're running down the center of our body, except for our rib cage and brain, cranium. When we picture our bones, our nervous system and muscles relax. And just notice the rhythm of your breath. There's nothing to fix, nowhere to go. Just come into the incredible rhythmic intelligence of your body. And then with the next breath, dropping into that space between your belly button and your heart bone. Sorry, your belly button and your backbone. Into your own soft belly. Into that place where all creative ideas stem from, truly. Where everything is regenerated and generated. Into your own gut, into your own instinctual knowing. And then dropping into your heart, into the physical part, the physicality of your heart. I now see that the heart is a spiral. Cardiac muscle is a spiral, it's a vortex. And the energy field of your heart goes out about 3 meters around you. Dropping into that electrical energy at the center of your being, that bridge between your connection to the earth and your connection to the cosmos. And imagine that your heart is a third lung and that you're breathing into it, giving it all the space it needs. Feeling the rise and fall of your sternum and ribs. Just hello, heart. And just notice that as you consciously come into these 3 words, if ever you find yourself drifting away, just think of bones, belly, and heart, or heartbeat, and breath. 4 words. Just as you picture or think or visualize these, notice how you're not thinking as much. And I'm just going to rest my phone here for 30 seconds. I'm just going to go silent for 30 seconds, and I want you to practice staying in that world behind your skin and under your eyes and down below your chin. And just notice that not only are you breathing through your nose, but that your whole body is expanding and contracting. Breathing in oxygen, but you're also bringing in prana and life force and letting go through your skin. Just enjoy the intimacy of feeling all of that without thinking. And this is where your dog lives all the time. Starting now. Horse wisdom said to busy, speedy human mind, be here, now, inside your own fetlocks and knees and body curves. Breathe, relax, wait, graze on the now. From inside, then go outside. Connect first to your vortex heart and smiling belly. No world to save. I'm going to read it one more time. Horse wisdom said to busy, speedy human mind, be here, now, inside your own fetlocks, your knees and body curves. Breathe, relax, wait, graze on the now. From inside, first, then go outside. Connect first to your vortex heart and smiling belly. No world to save.